Can someone tell me what indignant means in normal English? It just sounds terrible. Yeah? It's a negative word. It's like, I'm put off by you. You're detestable what you're doing. What's interesting is that it was Peter, James, and John that went up the mountain. And do you see that two of them now approached Jesus without the third one? So they're compounding this whole drama. It's like watching Survivor, where there's allegiances and backstabbing happening. And now these two are cutting that one out of it. And now he's part of the lower caste again, because they are now going to sit on the right and left hand of Jesus. Jesus called them together, verse 42, and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and the high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Again, we see that Jesus is saying, if you want to be great, if you want to be famous, fine. It's not wrong. But be famous for God's stuff, godliness, the things that matter to God. If you think of Mother Teresa, what's she famous for? Anyone want to just help me out?
Kindness.
Kindness? Yeah, what else?
Serving the poor.
Serving the poor. Yeah, and we all know which country she served in. In India, Calcutta, worked among lepers and the destitute. She is known for that. She's famous for that. So fame in itself is not the problem. It's what you're famous for. If I use an example like Michael Jackson. Who knows what Michael Jackson is famous for? Say it with respect. Anyone? Know who he is? Yes? He's famous for music. What else? Plastic surgery. He's probably the face of plastic surgery. And I can't do it, but if I could have done that kind of thing, my son kind of got into that a few years ago, and luckily that phase passed as well. He's famous for the moonwalk. Have you ever thought about how many starving children were fed when Michael Jackson did the moonwalk? No. Have you ever thought about how many lives were enriched and marriages saved when he got plastic surgery? See, that's fame for yourself. But then you have another person like Mother Teresa who's famous for giving of herself, for making a difference, for the stuff that matters. And Jesus said to his disciples, you want to be famous for right hand and left hand, the throne to rule and reign and have a title? Don't be like that. He said, if you want to be famous for anything, be famous for serving your brothers and sisters, for being humble before those that walk with you. Be famous for those three things. What about our church? Churches are famous for some things. You know that in Revelation 3 verse 1, Jesus writes to churches and he says to this one church, I know your deeds. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. So our reputation really matters. It's what God sees us for, what we are known in heaven for. For Grace Church, we have decided we want to be a church that are serious about winning people for the gospel, for the kingdom. And that also includes winning the hearts of our children that are raised in the church and in the faith. But we want to win them for the faith, because children still have to decide if they're going to continue on this road or not, or opt out. We want to be serious about building people up in their faith and equipping them for ministry and equipping them for leadership. And we are serious about sending people and making an impact on our world. And if we can't go ourselves, we're going to give up our resources to send others. You know that our logo even is so symbolic in that the different colors speaks of the diversity, the multiculturalism, and the different accents. Now, of course, there's a predominant accent having so many South African migrants, but I love hearing the Dutch accent and the Canadian, and there's, what others are there? There's British, I've heard a few Australian, which is very nice. but it's that multicultural church. And then we have those circles, and they overlap. So there's friendship circles, there's ministry circles, and there's circles still forming the half one. But our church want to be known for that community. EQR. 3 simple words. Exit the experience. Move on, whether it's good or bad. Be able to move on. Qualify for God's kind of greatness. And be renowned for godliness. The things that matter to God. You know, when I at first did the sermon and I had those 3 words EQR, I thought that reminds me, EQ kind of sounds like when you adjust sound, you equalize it. EQ. But what's EQR mean? I thought, well, I'm just going to take a chance. I'm going to Google EQR and see if it has any meaning. And I was amazed at what EQR means. EQR actually stands for a system that is built into the engine of the Mercedes-Benz off-road car. Now, pause there. When Jesus walked the earth, he would use objects like farmers sowing seed or vines growing to teach people. Now, fast forward to the year 2012, I think he would have used stuff like off-road cars to teach people principles. And I think there's something of it contained in this as well, an object lesson. EQR in the car thing stands for the electronic quick reverse. Now, get this. This is amazing. This EQR in this engine enables the car to change direction quickly and rock the vehicle free, exiting the experience, in rough terrain so that it can move on. I thought that was pretty amazing. I don't know about you. I thought, I'm preaching that, and that's what it does. It's exiting. It's not getting bogged down. Don't be bogged down. Don't be bogged down in former high experiences, low experiences, but get out of it and use a shovel if you have to, in a symbolic sense. But move on to the things that God wants to grow in your life. Move on. This Unimog, someone came to me after the first service and said that this is the vehicle that was used in the South African army. Anyone agree? I wasn't in the army, I missed that, so then you would know about this amazing vehicle. I want to show you a few things that this vehicle is renowned for. It is renowned for saving lives. It just sounds like a Christian car to me. Renowned for saving lives. It is renowned for working hard. That picture there is of it cleaning out recently one of the tunnels in England, and they said there was 100 years worth of dust and grime, and this car was fitted with instruments to get in there and clean it. Now you can have a flashy car and drive through that tunnel and say, well, that was a nice experience, but this car was in there serving, working, cleaning it up. It was making a difference, making a contribution. Oh, that the church would be like that. And I think most of you are. We are a hard-working people. It is renowned for braving difficult terrain. Again, just a thing that I love, brave and going into difficult terrain. I had so many conversations with migrants like yourself that said to me, Joe, I know I'm here to make a difference. I know God brought me here for a reason. But you know what shakes us in our foundation is when we think, well, we could maybe feed the poor. And then we find out that the government's doing that. Oh, shivers, now what do I do with myself? And then we think, well, maybe we can give our excess food away or our clothing. And it's kind of like you can do that, but you take it to someone else who gives it to the poor. It's not like we actually run a soup kitchen or we actually give clothing, food to the poor. So in a way, people feel like, that's what I could have done back in my old country, but now here I'm not so sure what I can do for the Lord. I want to drive a point home today. It's braving difficult terrain. That's why you're here. Do you know that you are now in a democracy that actually works? And it means that your vote actually counts and actually can decide whether one or another person gets into a local council or local parliament or the government. Your vote can be the difference. Peter Abetz, who's a pastor in our church, in his area, what do you call it? Electorate, thank you. He got in, I think, by 116 votes, or 160, or around there. That's barely in. That's about, well, we have more votes in Grace than that. That's how slight the margin is at times. And maybe you think this is boring. Why do we talk about voting in church? I'll tell you why we are. Because if the wrong people get into government, your religious freedoms will be taken away. You know that there is, just this past week, the Scarborough Baptist Church is being grilled by their local council. They have revoked their right to have Easter services, funerals, youth groups, band practice, because worship entitlements means only the Sunday service. And they now have to apply to get special permission to do a funeral, youth group, or anything that's in the week. If it happens to them, it can happen to us. And it's because there's ungodly people that are anti-Christian, anti-church, that are in positions of government. You're in a country where your vote can swing that. Use it. You're in a country where you can write a letter, write it. If you haven't been writing letters to Parliament or something, please get on board with making a difference. And as a church, we many times would on our Facebook, I would send out letters to the email list to say to people, please write, there's an issue that's now on the table, like the gay lobby groups that have been wanting to change the definition of what family and marriage means. And I don't think people realize what the implications are if they get it right. They got voted down because the Christians, these family groups, have lobbied those with the power, the senators, to vote against it, and it got voted down. In the Tasmanian Parliament, it won by a margin of 8-6. 8-6. If 2 more people voted the other way, it would have changed the definition of marriage in Tasmania. Now, here's the reality check. Once that comes in place, as it did in Canada, the school curriculum changes so that kids are taught booklets, for example, a prince who marries a prince. And when a father went to complain about it, he got locked up. When a person in the courts who does marriages, it's not a pastor, marriage celebrant, when a gay couple came to him and said, we want to get married, he said, listen, I have a conflict of interest because of my faith, but I'll give you to my colleague, he will marry you. They sued this first man and he got fired from his job. That's the reality of this one little example. It's the reality of the Scarborough Baptist Church just around the corner. And if you're in the Stirling Council area, you need to write and voice your concern. But that's what Christians should do. We should not just watch it all happen around us, but let's make things happen. And let's keep Australia from sliding from a secular into a godless country. Anyway, I'm going to bring it back on track here. This Unimark is renowned for its endurance. Think of your husband right now. Think of your wife, of your children, your family. Be of the enduring kind. Be of the enduring kind. Endure means that there will be high points, there will be low points, but we will endure. God wants us to be an enduring people. And as a church, we want to endure. As Christian leaders, we want to endure. Oh, I pray that God will shake some of you in your hearts, that you will start to think that not Joe, I'm going to stay a pastor, but you could be a senator or a local council member. You can. I met a federal senator. He had a heavy accent. He was from I think Scotland, if I remember right. But it means you who have an accent can be a senator too. And I just pray that God would raise up Christian men and women in this country. Or maybe as a journalist or an accountant or a teacher, you make a Christian difference. When I was in Technikon Pretoria, that's the TAFE in Australia, studying graphic design, at one point they said to us, you have to design a cat food box. So, of course, I designed this box and I had this cat there and the little pallets, my little pictures were all fish-shaped. And I liked the idea because it represented to me a Christian thing. But I got grilled by my teacher to say to me, don't you ever bring your faith into your work. So I backed off.